Hi, my name is Cheryl and I am a crafty little chickie. Today I'm going to show you the tutorial for these sheep. There's 3 different sizes and they go with the other tutorials that are labeled Counting Sheep Shell Stitch Baby Blanket. There's a blanket and then there'll be these sheep on those blankets that have 10 of them. I have 4 of the middle size and 3 of the large size, and I'm going to be making the 3rd one here of the small size here in this tutorial. These are the legs. It's kind of hard to show when they're not actually sewn on. They'll just actually be sewn onto the blanket, so at no time will they actually be sewn onto the sheep appliques. Alright, so I've done them in 3 different sizes, and the reason why is because they're going to be jumping over a fence. Each of these will be jumping over a fence, and it's the whole story of counting sheep to fall asleep. Alright, so the smallest ones will be the ones that are furthest away in the field on the blanket, and for that I used this crochet hook, and it is E or 3.5. For the middle-sized hook, I used 5 or H sized hook. For the large size, I used I'm not sure what the letter is, but it is a 7mm. And it's the same yarn, which I will show you in just a minute which yarn I used. But just by using the smaller to the bigger hooks, it creates this much of a different size using the exact same yarn and exact same pattern. Alright, so I will show you the yarn that we're using in this pattern next. Okay, so here's the yarn that I used for this to make these sheep appliques. I used Bernat Handicrafter cotton yarn. You could also use white, just regular Red Heart or Bernat or whatever brand. But this is what I had on hand, and I'm really a fan of the Handicrafter cotton yarn. I really like that. So that's what I used for the white, the main part of the sheep. And for the snout / face, these are it's just a really poofy sheep that just really needs to be shorn. So then all you see is like just a little black snout. That is the explanation, I guess, of the applique there. And for the black, I used Red Heart Comfort yarn in black. Okay, so the tools that you're going to need for this tutorial to make these sheep appliques are a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, a stitch marker, and of course the hook that I mentioned earlier, crochet hook. For this one, I'm using the smallest sizes, the one I'm making right now, but this one is E or 3.5. If you want to make the medium size one, you can use the H or 5 crochet hook, or to make the large sheep applique, 7mm. I'm not sure what letter this is. It just has the millimeter on there on this one. Okay, so it all depends on which one you're making. Or if you want to make them all the same size, that works too. Okay, so those are the tools that we will be using for making this sheep applique. Alright, so now we are going to start making the sheep applique. Of course, I'm making this one in the smallest one, which is a 3.5 hook or E. If you want to make the middle size, then you can use H or a 5mm hook, and the larger size is a 7mm hook, but I don't remember what the letter size was for that. Okay, so we're going to start this off with a magic circle. If you don't know how to do that, or if you can't remember, I will show you right now. Leave yourself a fairly long tail. Wrap the top over your pointer finger. Keep your 2 middle fingers together, wrap the yarn around there twice, put it on top of your pinky, bring the other yarn to it and pin it between your pinky and your thumb. Then you're going to take your hook underneath these 2 here, and then you're going to go back over here and you're going to yarn over here. Pull through, and then you're going to take from that same place, yarn over and pull through and do a slip stitch. You can take it off your hands now. Now you're ready to start your magic circle single crochets. We want to do 10 single crochets in this circle. So the first one we'll do nice and loose. And then what we want to do is we want to put our stitch marker into that very first stitch. It can be a little difficult to find it. You want to do it loose because it's going to get a little bit of tight for stitches, especially on the smallest sheep where you're using this hook that is actually a smaller hook than what is recommended for this yarn. So it can get a little bit to be a tight stitch. So we've done the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So you've got 10 single crochets into the magic circle, and this is what it'll look like at this point. Now you want to make sure that these yarns are straight. The one that's actually coming out in the front here, you want to make sure that's in the front. You're going to pull your tail out and pull that out to the left. And then the yarn out of these two, the one that's right in the front, that's the one you start pulling. So you hold on to your work with your left hand and pull with your right, and opposite if you are left-handed. Pull till you can't really pull anymore. And then you grab your tail. Hold on to your work tight and pull the yarn until it's snug. You'll see that there's no space now in between that circle. So you can put your hook back in your loop and tighten that up. And bring your tail to the back. What I tend to do a little bit is I want to stretch out this hook a little bit, so I pull on that stitch marker there before I take it out, because now we're going to be joining the last crochet here to the first one and ending the first row and starting the second at the same time. Okay, so we go into that stitch and we've got 1. Of course, you want to put your stitch marker right back so you'll always know your first stitch, because in a circle it's hard to find it. Okay, so for this next round, round 2, we want to double the size. So we're going to be going from 10 stitches to 20, which means we'll be doing 2 stitches in each stitch. So we've already done 1 in the first one. I'm going to go back to the same one and do another one. And we're going to be putting 2 stitches in every stitch all the way around. So that'll mean that we have 20 stitches. So now we've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because this is a hook that's smaller than what is recommended for this yarn, it gets really tight. So that's why I count my stitches as I go around, because it's really easy to lose a stitch in here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are in this next stitch. 9 and 10 are in the next one. 11 and 12. 13 and 14. Oh. 13 and now 14. 15 and 16. 17 and 18. And the last 2 now, 19 and 20. Okay, so that is what it looks like after round 2. Okay, so for round 3, we're also going to be doing an increase round, but we won't be increasing for the entire circle, for the entire round, because I need exactly 28 stitches, and if I would do a complete doubling or a complete increase, then I would be at 30 stitches. So just follow me along here. So we can take that marker out there for a bit, put 1 single crochet into that first stitch, and then replace that stitch marker. And then in the next stitch, we're going to be putting 2. And that's going to be the pattern throughout this round, except for the last 4 stitches. we're going to be putting 1 single crochet in 1 stitch. Second stitch is going to be 2 single crochets. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be counting around until I get to 24 stitches. That'll be the last increase stitch, and then I will no longer increase for the rest of the round. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 in the next stitch, and then 5 and 6 are in the next stitch. 7 in the next stitch, and 8 and 9 in the next stitch. 10 in the next stitch, 11 and 12 in the next stitch, 13 in the next stitch, 14 and 15 in the next stitch, 16 in the next stitch, 17 and 18 in the next stitch. Again, this is still a very tight stitch, so you want to make sure you're not missing any. 19 in the next stitch, 20 and 21 in the next stitch, 22 in the next stitch, 23 and 24. So this is my last stitch that I'll be increasing because I need a total of 28 stitches, and the reason why is because it's so that these shell stitches. That is my dog drinking in the background right now, if you're just wondering. She's a very loud drinker. So I need 28 stitches to have exactly enough room to do these shell stitches here. Alright, so I'm at 24 now, so I can't really increase anymore because I only have 4 stitches left. So then I just do 1 single crochet and the remainder in the 4 stitches. Right, 27 and 28 stitches for this round. Alright, so that is round 3. Okay, so for round 4, it's going to be just 1 single crochet in each stitch around. So because we want to keep 28 stitches, we just need it to be 1 round bigger. Okay, so we remove our stitch marker for a bit there. Put 1 single crochet into that stitch and replace our stitch marker. Okay. So we're going to be putting 1 single crochet in each stitch all the way around. So it looks like it's curling a little bit now, but it will be fine. As soon as you lay it flat and kind of flatten it out and stretch it out just a little bit, and it'll become flat right away. Okay, so coming up on the last few stitches here, and the last one. Okay, so here you can see the tail is fairly long when you make it with a magic circle, but okay, so if you just kind of stretch it out a little bit, lay it flat, and then it is straight again. Alright, so that is what it looks like at the end of round 4. Okay, for round 5, that's when we'll start to do the shells here. So at this point, we no longer need the stitch marker, because once we start doing the shells, you'll be able to tell exactly where the round begins. So we can put that aside. And what we're going to do is we're going to skip this first stitch, and we're going to double crochet 6 times into the second stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So it is a snug fit to get all of them in there, but they are there. And you want to check here, you want to pull your shell off to the side just a little bit, because you'll see a stitch right there, because we're going to skip the next stitch and we're going to do a single crochet in the second stitch. But you just want to make sure you pull your shell back a little bit so you'll be able to see that one stitch there, because we're skipping that one. And then the next one, do a single crochet. Then we're going to skip a stitch and do the exact same thing here. Have 6 double crochets in the second stitch. So we got 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Again, pull it off a little bit, so there's that stitch that we're missing, or we're skipping, and we're going to do a single crochet in the next. Alright, so we repeat that pattern for 2 more shells, which will be 4. So once you're done the 4th one, I'll meet up with you then. Okay, so we have finished 4 shells. We need to do a single crochet. Make sure it's not that first one, but go into the second one here for a single crochet. We're going to be doing 1 more shell. So we're skipping the stitch, doing 2 double crochets in the second stitch, and 6 double crochets into that stitch. So we've got 4, 5, and 6. I'm just realizing now that I could have said that I would have met up with you at the end of shell 5, but better too early than too late, right? Okay, so shell 5 is done. Make sure you skip that first stitch and single crochet into the second one. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shells now. And the 6th one, we're not going to finish completely because we're going to be adding, switching to black yarn right at the end of it. Right, so we skip 1, go to the second one here and do 6 double crochets here. We've got 1, 2, 3, let's do that one again. 4, 5, and then for 6 we're not going to complete it totally. We're going to pull through those first 3 loops, and rather than yarning over and pull through the last 2 loops to finish the double crochet, we are actually going to pull the white yarn to the back, kind of hold it with your finger, and then we get some black yarn here. Just fold it over your finger so that it goes onto your hook like that. Pull it through the 2 loops, still holding your white yarn in the back there. And then you want to keep the black tail behind there with the white yarn. And then I transfer it over to holding it with this hand, or whichever works for you. And then we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to do a single crochet. So we're going to make sure we miss that first stitch and single crochet with the black yarn into that second stitch. Okay, so then we're going to continue the pattern along, and we're going to skip the stitch, and then in the one after that we're going to do 6 double crochets with the black yarn. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I know black yarn does not translate well on the screen. It's hard to tell even when I'm looking at it here. where the stitches are, but I did do 6, so it's always good to know. So what we're going to do again, we're just going to do one last single crochet. We're going to skip that first stitch and single crochet into the second stitch. And what we can do is we can take our scissors, cut off, give yourself a little bit of a tail, cut off the black yarn, and we can also turn it around, cut off the white yarn here. I usually just make it the same length as the black was, just so I know I'm not making it too short. Okay, so we have cut all our tails off, and we just need to slip stitch this last one, pull the yarn through, and tighten. Okay, so you can kind of see that it's turned out to be just like this other one. Excuse me. So what we need to do now is we just need to sew in our ends. And because this is an applique, I'm not too concerned about what it looks like in the back. We're going to take our yarn needle, thread your yarn on, and I go underneath this first single crochet, just to make sure that this knot here goes down and back rather than forward or anything else, that you'll be able to see it. Don't pull too tight, otherwise you're going to warp this stitch here. And then I go back and forth a few times in the main part. And cut that one off. Do this black as well. Again, I go under the single crochet so that it pulls back properly, but again, not too tight, just so it's just barely tight. And then I go underneath these double crochets a few times. Like I said, it doesn't really matter what it looks like back here as long as you haven't gone through to the front. Even with this dark yarn, sometimes I wonder if you'll even be able to see it if it went through the front, but... And then just go back a few stitches. And cut off your end. And then for this one, because we didn't knot this off, some people are a little concerned because we went straight from the white into the black. Some people get a little concerned about that it'll fall out. What I do then is I just go back and forth 3 times in the stitches. Make sure I've got some good stitches that I've gone through. And if you go back 3 times, like 1, 2, 3, there is no way that that yarn is going to come out. Especially, this is going to be sewn onto a blanket because it's an applique. It's not going anywhere. But it's always best to be safe than sorry, right? Cut that one off. And the last one is your original. It's pretty much snug in there as it is already, because it's been crocheted and tightened, but I just do a couple of stitches more. Just put it through a few, tighten it, and then you can cut it off. Alright, so then this is the sheep, the body of the sheep. So the next thing we're going to do is we are going to make the legs, which are very, very simple. Just need to get a stitch onto our hook of the black yarn. What I do is I just wrap it around my pointing finger twice, kind of pin it between those 2 fingers, pull it forward and over again, so it goes over your finger, insert the hook, and tighten. There are so many different ways of doing that, so whichever way works best for you, what you remember, works just fine. Okay, so for the legs, it's just basically a bunch of slip stitches. So chains, pretty much. So we're going to do 16 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. And then you want to give yourself a little bit of a tail because this is what you're going to actually be using to sew it in onto the blanket. So you want to make sure you have enough to sew into each stitch and also enough to pull out, and that the yarn that's going through your yarn needle and back out. So I just give myself a little bit of a tail. And then this, you don't need to slip stitch again, or you don't need to do another chain. You just pull straight through. And then you take your yarn that is the shorter one, the one that you started. You want to sew that one in. You don't want to sew in the longer tail end, because that's what you're going to use to attach it to the blanket or to whatever item that you're making for it. So what I do is I start from the back. I go through the back. The reason why is because I want this knot to pull to the back. I don't want it to go to the front. And for me, the way I tell it, I know this is a really bad example with black yarn, but what I do is, if you can see the V's in the front, that is considered the front of the chain. Right? Not sure if you can see it there. I'm not sure how well that'll show up, but that'll be the V's in the front of the chain. So, but you want to go it through the back. Again, that'll pull that knot to the back. Don't do it too tight, but just so it's just snug. And then just go back up the chain through the loops. As you just do a couple of times, because it's going to be sewed on anyway, so it will not go anywhere. Cut off your chain there. You've got one like this. So you're going to make 2 of those for each sheep. If you want the legs to be longer, of course you can add chains to it. And what I do is then I just kind of fold it over just to see what it looks like. Kind of hide it a little bit underneath there. And for my design of this blanket, the sheep are actually going to be jumping over the fences. So that's why I kind of like the sheep legs to kind of be kicking out towards the back, and looks like they're jumping over the fence. So that is what the sheep applique tutorial looks like. So there will be other tutorials as well that go along with this counting sheep shell stitch baby blanket. There will be the fences. There will be the blanket itself. I'll show you how to make the blanket. You can also just do just the blanket. A lot of people do that style of blanket and then do alternating colors, so it's a stripe. But for this one, I've done in 3 separate colors. There's the green of the field, and then there's 2 different colors of blue, as in the sky kind of getting darker at night. And that's what I've done with this one. So like I said, there's going to be this tutorial, there's going to be the fences, and there's also going to be the numbers as well as the blanket tutorial. Each sheep will have a number that will be on them as well. So from 1 through 10, they will each have a number, so those sheep will be counting, going over the fences, counting as if counting sheep to fall asleep. Alright, so thanks so much for watching this tutorial. If you're looking to make the entire blanket, just search for Counting Sheep Shell Stitch Baby Blanket, and you'll be able to find all the tutorials in making that blanket. Thanks so much for watching. I would really appreciate it if you would like this video and or share it with your friends, or even subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much.